Call this April 23rd
That was
session
supposed to be my
to order, please.
Councilmember Deems,
Here.
Councilmember Howe, Councilmember Hyman, Councilmember Jackson,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember or Vice Mayor Riffle,
Here.
and Mayor Malpajet.
Here.
Presentation, discussion of Hope Project Village Square project proposal.
Lopez, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate everyone coming here this evening, and I'm going to try to keep my end of this somewhat brief, and really open it backwards to questions from you guys. I have had a couple different times that I've came here and addressed council on this project. I've also had an opportunity at several times to meet with Manager Fell and discuss it in further detail. Additionally, I have Mr. Comer here from the City Park Department. And we've had a lot of discussions, he and I together, for a long period of time regarding this project, and the different things that we have come up with, and, the component of, with the City Park Department running it. And so, that'll be his role here, this evening, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes, and then, I'll let Doug speak for a couple of moments, and then, turn it back over to you guys for some questions. So just as we go through this, again, on a 50-foot overview, okay, this project, started in concept a couple of years ago, and it kind of began with two things. One, when ABC News ran the story on Clarksburg, West Virginia being the birthplace of fentanyl in the United States of America. And I know that everybody here is familiar with that. I'm not going to play the video again. And at that same time, the state of West Virginia winning its opioid lawsuits against the drug manufacturers, and all these monies that were now going to be available in addition to the already available federal and state grants for a variety of different opioid and recovery topics. And, at that time, the needs of the city were to have a place where we could come together as one to provide education, recreation, community togetherness, intervention, and all of those things that I've spoken of previously. And since the time that I've started on this project, we've had a lot of things that have developed in the city of Clarksburg. Those changes have been, first and foremost, the school consolidation, which I've been here speaking of. So, with the school consolidation, the location of this facility is certainly absolutely fabulous. We now have all the people who were going from Liberty High School are now driving past there every day to get to Robert C. Byrd. All of the people who were going to Washington Irving are now driving past there to get to Liberty Middle School. So that intersection where Village Square sits is in the hub of all of this new traffic, which is where all the parents are gathering and all the kids. And so, that further, proved to the need in the good location. Additionally, with the closure of WI, that opened up the field space at Height Field, which we have had a lot of discussion on. And, when we have the ability, as we start this project, to tie Height Field into it potentially, that certainly only grows the benefit and value of it. Additionally, we've had the closure of the YMCA that's also happened. And so, as our needs have grown, where it leaves us sitting now is we're a city of 15,000 people and don't even have a place to shoot a basketball inside in the city. Okay, in addition to all of our other needs. So, I was asked here tonight so that we could kind of go through some questions that council may have, as you guys prepare to vote on the opioid application that will be on the agenda at the next meeting. And what that application is simply calling for is for $25,000 for architectural renderings of conversion of that facility into, what I have proposed here for you guys. That's so that we can begin studying and looking at how this project could work. Okay, we're not saying this is, yes, we're doing this. Okay, I'm simply asking for the beginning component to study what we need to look at to evaluate the viability of this project from an economic and functional standpoint of the facilities. And as to, this multi-generational facility that will be built. By multi-generational facility, okay, we have a need not only for our youth in this community, but also for our senior population and for the regular middle-aged adults. Okay, and we know the needs of the Senior Citizen Center, and they've been looking for a long time. And this facility, allows us to bring all of those things together into one place to service the needs of the community. The things that will be inside of it, and again, to be very clear, this is not going to be a place where people receive Suboxone and those sorts of treatment modalities. This is not a treatment facility. Okay, and as the title says, Clarksburg's Community Opioid Prevention, Education, and Recreation Center. And that is what it will be. Okay, where it will be different, if I were to tell you conceptually to think of the bridge in Bridgeport, okay, where it will go further and be different, inside of the facility that's proposed here, okay, just what I have proposed, there would be a learning library inside of the facility. There will be a virtual gaming zone inside of the facility. There will be a non-denominational chapel inside the facility. There would also be space for lease tenants that we would offer a daycare center, which is so drastically needed in our community. Need for an urgent care facility that will be inside of the facility. Additionally, the learning library would be tied into other recreational spaces that will be used for things other than sport. Okay, I'm an athlete. Most of you, the people here are athletes, but recreation is music. Recreation, so I've proposed a small music studio inside so that the kids and people can go someplace and play music. Okay, they also have proposed in here an indoor grow garden to grow healthy food so that you can have the ability to use that for the food service in there that will provide food for the after school and disadvantaged children programs that need to happen out there. Okay, and so this is a very diverse facility that will be able to house and accommodate a lot of different things. The biggest thing that I want to kind of talk about into the questions of how does this facility fall under the guidelines of the Memorandum of Understanding and opioid funding? And so I know that, I want to read here how the HOPE falls into the categories of prevention, education, and intervention. Okay, and I know that there's several pages here that specifically speak, and I'm not going to read it all. Okay, but for the questions that everybody's had, I believe that these 4 or 5 pages, speak extremely specifically into how, without question, this facility and what it's going to offer fits into the Memorandum of Understanding, not only of the West Virginia First Fund, but of the federal, okay, and let me walk backwards for a minute. I've tried to model this after federal stuff so that we as a community can apply our own selves for opioid funding for this facility. We're seem to be in the business here of how are we allocating our opioid settlement funds as a city, and that's wonderful. But on a bigger picture, we are the #1 qualifying opioid zip code in the darn country, folks. So we have the ability, there's a list that I've included pages and pages and pages and pages of federal grants and state grants that are available to address opioid needs in a community that all fit in to this facility and to a lot of other things in our community, but specifically to this facility. And so the goal is to, as we start this project, we're going to be applying for federal grants, state grants, and local grants for all the different components that fit into the way that this facility was built. And by my general, acknowledgement of all the funds that are available, there is a huge amount of money that we as a city can apply for, and I would think get, being that we are the number one opioid zip code in the country, per ABC News. It's going to be hard for people to refute that when we apply. Here's ABC News says it right here. Then the community needs that we have. We're the biggest qualifying zip code in the country, and we don't even have a place to shoot a basketball inside with 15,000 people. And so, I'm, very adamant that we can really apply for a variety of different federal and state funds that could come into this project and really make it extremely economically viable for our community. And so, that's just kind of a 50-foot overview. Again, I know you guys have all the details in front of you, and you guys have heard me, excuse me, speaking many times. So I'm not going to beat it up. I'm going to allow you guys to ask some questions. But before I do that, I'll just ask Doug to come up here for a minute if you've got anything that you want to add in, Doug, or say, and then I'll turn it back over to some questions. Thank you.
All right, how's everybody? I guess to kind of tap on what Tom's been talking about, we have opportunities here, and opportunities could be having a facility like this that can not take care of just the kids, which is kind of my department, but all those that are needed. Not being number one in that zip code I'm not very proud of hearing that comment. I'm very surprised, but I did hear the last one, which again makes me feel, what can I do on my part? With a facility like that, it could be something that Parks definitely has a hand involved in that on the recreation side. I'm not going to go out there and talk to someone, counsel them on anything, except it'd be to throw a ball to, or learn how to shoot something, or teach them a sport. That's kind of my forte. But there's other people out there. So, not only you're doing the opportunity, giving them a place to go, which we probably all got to go when we were kids, but also gives, those as a place, when you need a hand, when you need someone to come to talk to, or, need somebody that's in dire need. We have to try to help get those people away from the edge and show them that there is some value in life with them being a part of it. And, I think that would be just, one of the subs that goes with a facility like this. So, again, I appreciate Tommy's passion in it and everything that's wanting to be a part of it. And I think there's a pretty good plan, at least to kind of throw the feasibility study out there and just kind of throw it against the wall and see what sticks, see if it makes sense, if there's an interest in this, and then on top of that, find the means on what we can do to make that happen. So, like I said, I'm all about, when I interviewed for this job, when I got it, it was all about the kids. Anything to do to benefit the kids, and this would be an opportunity there that to, give us those opportunities to help out those that, as far as I'm concerned, it's me paying forward, what I did when being a Parks kid growing up in Northview, or, doing Parks camps when we were the county, right? So I'm repping tonight, but, it's just what we can do to, like I said, kind of pass that on to those who are going to be our citizens here and going to be our adults, and hopefully stay in the city and, make a life for themselves here. So anyway,
Thank you, Doug.
thank you guys.
One thing that I'll kind of add to what Doug has said here, just painting the big picture for everyone. When we move forward with this project, imagine having Village Square tied to the park system, having height field for field space. We've got our pool there. We've got the largest airsoft facility in the country across the street on Armory Road. So we're talking about growing a hub here. And when we host cheer tournaments, wrestling tournaments, swim tournaments, all those types of things, and we partner them with, okay, well, we know we've got this big tournament coming in this weekend, so we're going to do a concert at the amphitheater at the same time. to entertain those people. They can go to the pool, they can go to the amphitheater. Additionally, well, we're going to have a movie at the Robinson Grand that fits what they are audience-wise. And so we hub all of those things together, and that gives us that economic development and the traffic that we want, and ultimately, driving the need, hopefully, for a hotel that we so desperately need in this city. And if a hotel does get developed at the Waldo, that'll benefit it. Just kind of throwing out, and I put in there a developer's note. My thought in adding to this project in a phase 2 level is, the greatest resource I believe that we have beyond our people in the city is our park system. And, the park system does a great job here. And with the biggest resource of the park system being the pool that sits across the street. Well, could you imagine, instead of using the pool 2 months a year, if we could dome the pool and use that pool year-round as an indoor aquatic center, and then you have Village Square turned into this facility across the street and all the other things that we discussed. Now we really have an entire zone from Village Square to the park to Hyatt Field that is an economic development tool that draws people in, okay, and helps. All that zone is an opioid avoidance education and recreation zone. And so, there's a lot of prongs that really add to economic development, job creation, and so on with that. And so without getting into the weeds on it, I know you guys have had the literature and the stuff there. I'll open it up to some questions. What questions does anybody have?
So actually, can we start with Doug? Just, is there, and I don't even know what it would be called, but is there like a recreational master plan for the city? Like, is there a document that?
There is not.
Okay. Okay. So Mr. Lopez, I think you're right. The fact that we don't have a place for indoor recreation right now is a giant problem for kids. Luckily, we're hitting summer, but still, notwithstanding. And so we do have an opportunity with the YMCA building. There are properties that are attractive to us, whether those are available or not, that remains to be seen. I think as we're moving through this, I think we need to come up with some kind of master plan to say these are the types of facilities that we want. These are the types of facilities that we need, and kind of plan out how to put that puzzle together, and where we go. Doug, feel free to tell me I'm wrong. In your opinion, what things do you think we need in the city, from a recreational perspective?
As far as indoor is concerned,
Indoor, outdoor.
I guess to be honest, we should probably look at a blueprint of what the bridge already has in play. Just do something to that magnitude in Clarksburg. You don't need to do indoor turf fields or anything along those lines, but we could look outside the box a little bit. Like Tom made comments about the cheerleading competitions and wrestling matches and things like that. That could be in the basement of the Village Square. Isn't that space pretty big?
There could be a variety of spaces in
And I
the
apologize.
current Grand Ballroom.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I've been the upstairs a few times. I've been downstairs once, and that's when the county was looking at the option of looking at Village Square 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the potential, definitely, because you're not necessarily in the heart of the city, but you're butted up against it. And the comments he made earlier that kind of sheds light on me is that you got Liberty Middle, you got Liberty Middle, not dodging your question. But
No.
indoor basketball. Well, multi-purpose court.
Right.
You know, for indoor pickleball in the winter, you know, things along those lines. I mean, you could, you know, look outside the box a little bit and, you know, selfishly put in like golf simulators, you know, a place where somebody want to go rent space for X amount of time and do that. You know, and we have plenty of gyms in town. I don't think we need to go that route in any ways. But yeah, because for me, I mean, I'm looking at something that's for, you know, youth generated.
Right.
As far as concessions are concerned, I mean, I'd love to see a business in this area maybe come in there and pay rent and open concessions to serve, you know, the basics, you know, kids' food, chicken fingers, french fries, whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and when I was at League of Cities, they were actually talking about facilities like this where they have made commercial kitchen space and they rent that out.
That's absolutely included in the plan. Yes.
You know, so okay. I mean, the elephant in the room is the Y has a pool, right? I mean, it is the only thing that is valuable at the Y the pool.
I'll let him answer that first.
I mean, there's potential of why. I mean, we're kind of on a standstill right now, guessing. I know my job's always been to take care of the pool, so that's what we've been doing. And
Yeah.
as far as the future,
Well, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot there. I guess maybe that's maybe just a more open-ended question.
I mean, I think the options are good here. I mean,
Yeah.
right now you got some on top of the hill, you got some potentially across the river beside Sheets. I mean, and you know, it's just kind of, you know, which route the city decides to go in something like that.
Real quick, one comment. Kind of what Healthy Harrison did when they did their study for the Y. They addressed the bigger picture of the area and the needs. So I think that as far as like a master plan, no, but they touched on a lot of that, and I think they explained the need for it and what we have. And
Well, and I do. I agree. I agree with what you're saying, but we also know, and that study told us that the Y's got a lot of problems. That it's an aging facility. That the ability to get there is a problem.
I just meant in the study they touched on the surrounding areas as overall. Is
Oh,
what I meant.
yeah.
Not about the Y.
Councilmember Deans, I agree with you. I think council needs to sit down and have a work session on recreation. You've got Height Field, which council's interested in.
Right.
You have WI, which is gonna, in some form or another, come to the city. You have the Y, which council right now is all in on, and then you have Village Square. The city does not have the money, nor the resources, nor the time to do all four of those things. So council and one of those four isn't even in city limits.
And my question is this, who owns Village Square?
Village Square is owned by Mark Wilt.
Okay, and has Mr. Wilt given you permission to make? any kind of-
Absolutely. I'm here speaking on his behalf.
Okay,
and I
and do you have
arrangement.
legal paperwork to actually make a deal on his behalf is the thing?
Well, I represent him. I don't need legal paperwork to make a deal for him. I don't know exactly what you would be looking for, but I do represent Mr. Wilt. Mr. Wilt's a client of mine, and he's been here before to a couple of the other meetings and made council aware of that.
So, if that's the case there, at some point, if you're going to make a deal for him, there would have to be some type of legal paperwork.
Well,
But
at some point, yes.
My question is this, under the MOU with the opioid funds, you know, I heard it talk about, you know, when you first started about how the fentanyl problems here, this and that. How do you foresee that in any way addressing the fentanyl problem or the drug problem?
Well, there's about, and again, I don't want to read the 7 or 8 pages that are there in the paper that address that and speak to it specifically, but just on the most basic of basic adage, the lingo that we're all familiar with is to keep kids off of drugs, you have to keep them off the streets. Okay, and for starters, we don't have that here. Okay, but additionally, like I said, you know, there's probably about 7 pages, Mark, that specifically address prevention intervention and education, along with a study from the National Parks and Recreation Association that speaks to these types of facilities and how specifically they address all those different needs. And if you know, but there's about 7 pages worth of specifically broken down data that you have.
Yeah, I read through that, but I mean, I still really didn't get a clear understanding of actually how this facility, I mean, what I heard out here was we're going to have a little bit of this, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of that. So where does it actually come into the focus where it's actually going to address the opioid problem and the youth? You can keep kids off the street by keeping them in the house, but that's not necessarily going to keep them off of drugs.
I guess I'll have to go ahead and let me get the 7 pages and read it. Okay.
Well, I'm not going to sit here while you read 7 pages, but I want you to.
Page answer,
I mean,
Mark.
but,
You're asking me specific
Mr. Lopez, in short, just explain to me, how is a facility like that? We had the YMCA up here, and that facility didn't keep kids off of opiates. I mean, I just need to know because I've heard from Mr. Comer, he's got expertise in the parks, and you know, what expertise do you all have in prevention, intervention, treatment, and or recovery?
Okay, well, I'm not doing recovery there, but let me first go back. I respectfully disagree. I think the YMCA did help with keeping kids off the streets and off of drugs at some level, and I hear what you're saying.
So that's why we have the #1 opioid zip code then.
It wasn't enough. I don't disagree with you. I mean, I hear where you're coming from, but it wasn't enough. We need more of it. So under the areas of education, you know, if you want to turn here, education awareness campaigns. In many forms and fashion, education will always be occurring within the Hope. It will occur within the facility's advertising, which is also an expense allowed to be covered with opioid funding. Targeted education. The Hope will provide factual information about the dangers of drugs, focusing on skill building to handle stress and peer pressure rather than relying on fear-based tactics. Anti-drug posters will be on the walls. TVs in the facility will constantly be streaming anti-drug messaging, anti-drug education, and will also be addressing needs of new drugs into the area. Flyers and literature will be handed out with the same information and will be available to everyone that enters. Okay, and so as an example, you know, we've gone from heroin to crack to fentanyl, okay, and now there's another new super drug, you know, whatever it is that we're seeing in the news. Okay, so our TVs in that facility are going to be streaming those messages. Hey, be aware, don't do this drug. This is here, this is this, this is this. There's going to be flyers every place. The posters along the walls are going to be anti-drug messaging. There's also going to be the peer coaching rooms in there where people can come in just like yourself, okay, and talk to the kids. Also being able to counsel the parents and the grandparents. Teacher, and community member training will be available. The Hope will make available training to parents and caregivers on how to communicate with children about substance abuse and mental health. Okay, addressing local risks. Through data-driven assessments, the Hope will identify specific drugs causing problems in the area and tailor education and advertising campaigns to those risks. Just like we're talking about, hey, this new super drug's coming out that we're seeing on Facebook. The sheriff's departments are advertising about it. All those things. You know, we also need, as I put in here, if we become a drug-free city, which is another federal classification, okay, that facility can be the hub for the drug-free city education basis. Next, under prevention, that was just education a little bit. Under prevention, community centers prevent drug use by acting as centralized hubs that implement comprehensive, evidence-based, and environmental strategies to strengthen protective factors and reduce risks within a community. The Hope will certainly be doing this. Community centers engage in both universal prevention for everyone and selective intervention for high-risk individuals by offering safe environments, education, and alternative social activities that discourage substance abuse. Additionally, Clarksburg has very few alternative social activities to both youth and adult population. The Hope will now be a provider of those alternative activities. Additional ways the Hope can and will help prevent drug use, providing safe spaces and positive alternatives, safe haven for youth. Youth centers offer structured, supervised environments, i.e., after school programs, sports, arts, that give young people productive ways to spend their time, reducing their idle time often associated with drug experimentation. Substance-free events. They organize drug-free events and activities like teen dances. We used to have the Duggar dance, okay? Hosting teen dances out there in that grand ballroom space. Okay, it's just another thing. Okay, the conference center area can provide teen dances, cheer and wrestling competitions, and a variety of high attendance events perfect for the entire community. And our anti-drug messaging is playing during all those hubbed events. Coalition building. Centers often house or lead local coalitions such as drug-free communities that unite the parents, the schools, law enforcement, and businesses to tackle substance abuse collectively. They also reduce access and availability. They work to limit underage access to substances, such as educating the community and retailers on advocating for local environmental policies that help reduce drug use. Stigma reduction. Okay, they promote awareness of addiction as a treatable medical condition and encourage people to seek help for the struggles that they're having with these kids. If you're starting to struggle, okay, people have stigma removal we haven't even talked about as a huge component where these kids feel the stigma, okay, everybody in the community, okay, and it reduces and helps take away from that stigma. Okay, under the intervention vein, the Hope will provide intervention in a variety of different manners, some of which are below. Identifying at-risk individuals. Centers serve as or connect to early intervention points that can identify youth showing early signs of drug use, such as aggressive behavior or poor school performance. Support of the vulnerable population. They provide tailored programs for children with incarcerated parents, for those dealing with adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, which are factors for future addiction. Okay, ACEs, acute childhood experiences. Our community is full of adults and children with ACEs. And we have to address that because kids that have ACEs, okay, that's not necessarily drug use, it's being exposed to people that are doing drugs, whether it's in their family, in their school, in their community. And these facilities help address those kids through all these socialization and other activities that we're talking about. Okay, and there's a whole long list, okay, of just, again, I want to stop, okay, but there's a long list of things, you know, and I'll just, to Doug's end, you know, the Park and Recreation Association did a very large study on just this same very topic, okay, and I've included, you know, a lot of it, you know, in here in the data that you have, and again, it speaks to some of the things that, you know, adverse childhood experiences. A rising cause for concern in communities across the country is the impact of adverse childhood experiences and trauma on youth mental and behavioral health outcomes, including substance use. The CDC uses the term adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, to describe all types of abuse, neglect, and other traumatic experiences that occur in youth under the age of 18. ACEs include things like exposure to substance use in the home, domestic violence, racism, or divorce, which cause toxic stress and can lead to unhealthy, risky behaviors, chronic health conditions, low life potential, and early death. As the number of ACEs a person experiences increases, so does the risk of potential negative life outcomes, including injury, mental health, depression, anxiety, suicide, maternal health, infectious disease, because they get into those sorts of things. Okay, risky behaviors. Okay, community-based programs, including out-of-school and after-school programs, mentoring programs, sports programs, and other things of that nature, provide a variety of factors that lower the chances of experiencing ACEs. These programs offer youth safe places to play outside of school hours, free or affordable facilities for engaging in wellness activities, social activities, and opportunities to connect youth to their peers. It is important to note that ACEs not only impact youth, adults also are impacted by ACEs throughout their life and over time in their community. Okay, now I'll stop.
I appreciate your passion for the project. I'm looking at it though, and I've heard everything from the arts to the medical community in there. So my question is, where are all these paid professionals coming from, and where are those funds coming from to pay for all these professionals? Because when we're talking about addiction, intervention, treatment, recovery, this requires trained professionals, not just individuals who know how to shoot a basketball.
So there's two components to that. Obviously, the coaches and the recreation people handle the recreation. My proposal as far as the doctors, the urgent care facility will be lease tenants of our facility. They're going to pay to come in because we don't even have a doctor's office in the natural boundaries of the city. We would potentially rent space in the facility to an urgent care provider for the community stuff that we're discussing. Okay, there's the open classrooms and the learning libraries where you invite in members of the community who, like a Joanne McNeemer or somebody, there's lots of different groups that speak and want the opportunity to be in front of the population in the city here, both young and old. And they're paid by their organizations. We don't pay them. We're providing the space and them to have the opportunity, to be in front of people, and they come in and they do those specific strategy teaching courses that we're talking about. That's not something that we're hiring somebody to do. We work with the other organizations in the community that are already trying to provide that education.
So these spaces, are these just spaces that you're just letting individuals use? Are these leased spaces?
Okay,
How does that work?
so go backwards from it. The medical facility, as far as the urgent care and the daycare center, those will be, we're leasing them out to businesses. Okay, as far as the training and the mentoring rooms, okay, there will be open classroom space, like the homework lab, okay, and the open meeting space where they can come in and use our classroom and use that space, to teach those classes. And there's not a charge for the community member of the organization to come in to use our open classroom, but there is a charge, for the ancillary businesses that are, there, providing fee for service. So, even to the restaurant people that we talked about, okay, there's a lot of income opportunity, not only for the food service, but for the food service to provide for the after-school programs and to the needy kid programs and all that stuff. That's, those people get paid to do that. Okay, and so that can be housed in there. And again, depending upon what the income arrangement is and what they're making, the city charges them a fee. Also, for the open space, like that grand ballroom, okay, whatever type of event that we're having in there, we're going to do a more complicated food service. Okay, we're hosting an event, a conference style event, all that sort of stuff. There's revenue behind that, obviously. And so, that food service operation out there, is profit deriving and pays a fee. And so, short answer is the businesses that are out there making revenue, are lease tenants. And those that are coming to provide community education from our sister organizations get to use the classroom space for free, to talk to the kids, or the adults or whatever.
So is this going to be a free venue for the children who come in to use it?
It will be under a similar model to the YMCA, where those that require scholarship due to economic hardship, we'll be able to have that. But then, we'll still operate under that YMCA bridge model where there's a membership fee that's associated and they pay. But those who are the most in need, would again follow that YMCA model that they can be scholarshiped.
So this is contingent on membership.
It's contingent on membership, yes, and I've wrote a bunch of pages in here. So on membership, the bridge had about 5,000 members. The YMCA, when it closed, according to data, had about 2,500 members. And in the projections that I did, I used 70%, okay, of what the bridge had done. But the reality is, Councilman Jackson, we have more population on this side of town. Okay, the RCB feeder system has 4,000 students. The Bridgeport feeder system has 2,500, Lincoln 2,000, South Harrison 1,200. Our population basis here as a city is 16,000 compared to 9,000 for Bridgeport. Going further, with where that facility is located, it's much closer to Dobbridge County. It's much closer to other communities and other counties even to drive there as opposed to what it is to drive to Bridgeport. And so based upon that total population analysis, hypothetically, we could do much better than what the bridge is doing as far as pure memberships because, again, ultimately it's a numbers game and we have less amenities in our city as well. And so, we draw from a higher population base, all the school traffic crosses there, plus, the geography allows for people from Dobbridge County, Parkersburg, wherever, that these people are coming from. And so hypothetically, when you add in the senior citizen population and the senior recreation need, we could be at a much larger membership level than the other facilities.
Well, let me ask you a question, Mr. Lopez. Since you started talking about the figures, basically, Bridgeport has a higher median household income than Clarksburg, correct?
Correct.
So basically, it stands to reason that you're going to get more people out of that system who are able to pay than what you're going to get out of this system, even though we have a bigger population. So we're looking at more scholarships than what we are actual paid memberships.
No, I wouldn't say we're looking at more scholarships than paid memberships. I agree with what you're saying. There's more disposable income there. But again, looking at the rate structure of just what the YMCA charge, and again, there's several pages that speak to that in the document that you have in front of you. But on a membership basis, on average, you're looking at $30 a month. Okay, there's individual memberships all the way to family memberships. But when you're talking about that type of dollar range, I don't necessarily know that $30 a month is necessarily that big of a figure. While there are more kids in need, obviously, that would need scholarship, the reality is that $30 a month, which is what I used in the figures here that you have in front of you, is a number that is doable, I think. It's not an exorbitant amount like where it's $100 a month. And so I think that, with, again, even the offset for those that can't afford it, but you have triple the people, that still kind of tilts the teeter-totter, so to say.
Vice Mayor, you have anything for Mr. Lopez?
So 25 million is your very rough estimate?
That was a starting place, yes. And I don't know, again, that's why we want to study. That's why we want to let James start doing his work. And I put that number out there but how much of it, the other component, which you got to consider is the bridge in those places didn't get any opioid funding. So how much of it that we can raise backwards, I think is more of the question as opposed to where we're starting off at, because I think that we have the potential to really raise a lot of money through all these grants.
Where's the number about how much opioid money that?
Well, I mean, there's billions of dollars in opioid.
But like out of our opioid money now.
It's in there, I believe, in a couple of places, but it's $25,000 is what the architectural renderings that the application is asking for is what that cost that go to Mr. Swagger to begin doing the drawings.
But how much of it would it for the whole
Well, we don't know what the total number is because we don't know what the cost is. That's why we're having him, start.
But we know how much we have of opioid money.
Oh, the individual, the city has?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. I think it was, a couple $1 million.
No, I know how much we have. I'm saying how much of this project would require the amount that we have.
I'm not here to say that we want the whole $2 million that the city has. There's not an amount that's attributed to that. That's why, again, we have to see what the cost is. So I'm not here saying we need to take all of our $2 million or anything like that.
Now, the current owner, he will still retain ownership of the building?
Well, there's a variety. No, short answer. But again, that's depending upon the city. Do you guys, does the city lease the space? Does the city want to buy it? That's part of the conversation that we need to go down and have as we evolve and see what the economics of it really are, is to see what way fits the best. That's why I want to do this. We can kind of look at the cost and look at the structure, and those are the conversations that we have, moving forward, is what way works best.
What, go ahead.
All right, well, let me go down the line here first.
What? Okay, that's fine, but I was interrupted, so. No, go
Well,
ahead.
go ahead, Mr. Dean.
What?
God forbid you were interrupted, sir. Go ahead.
So, I hear you talking about scholarships and membership. That's also the model of the YMCA.
Agree. And so to answer where you're going, why I believe the YMCA failed and why I was here for so long telling everybody, hey, guys, the Y is a 50-year-old pole building located in a bad spot, okay? Bad spot. Additionally, doesn't offer the services that are currently available in the community, okay? And we know how many people in this very room didn't go to the Y and went to the bridge. And I won't point fingers at everybody. There's a lot of us, myself included.
I never went.
Okay, yeah, I mean, and so, it's like anything else. The several different functions or things, led to the eventual downfall of the YMCA, in my opinion. But the reality is, for us to replicate to where you're going the same thing again that's already failed doesn't make sense, especially, in an aging facility and the yada to it. And so, nobody from Doveridge County is going to drive to the YMCA. Okay, but somebody from Doveridge County will drive to the proposed project that we have here. Okay, again, it's just, what's available, comparable to your competitors as well, that quite simply stated is almost the same price. I mean, because it's about the same price for the bridge as it was for the Y. And so.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say was I really feel like the anti-drug message, the prevention part of it needs to be beefed up, and I think that discussion needs to happen with people who are experts in that field. I see two of them sitting back there. Recreation's great. I understand where you're going with this, but I feel like that the prevention part needs
Expanded, sure.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here having and again,
Sure.
This is a Play-Doh here. I'm bringing you guys the concept and the idea and showing you how we can do it. And again, as this project gets studied and evolved, we take all this different input and all these different things and make it into what we want.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Finished, Mr. Dean?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor,
Uh,
done?
yeah.
You skipped me.
Skip you.
Yeah, you skipped me.
No, I didn't. You went right after Mr. Dean's. Okay, Mr. Jackson, go ahead.
Okay, just one more question. And you were talking about this building and, whatever the ultimate cost of this is, what's the overhead that's already owed on this building that would have to be paid up?
That wouldn't be the responsibility of the city, whatever, no different than any house you're buying or anything else. The current owner will handle his debt obligations at the time that the facility is transferred or leased. That wouldn't fall to you guys.
What is that amount?
What's none of your business, Mark, what he owes
Okay.
on his building?
Okay. Well,
I didn't mean it
but
like it. Let me
as someone-
let's Mark and our buddies. We talk.
As someone who's partnering, you're asking us to partner with you, and as someone who's coming in and going to put our name on the dotted line, then
But
these
you
are
won't
things
be
that we need to
encumbered.
know.
You won't be encumbered by any current debt on the facility. That'll be part of the contract. When you guys take it over, okay, it's free and clear. You guys will not inherit or be part of any debt that's on the facility. No different than if you're buying a house on Main Street and you're paying $200,000. It don't matter what the person's loan is on it. When it gets transferred to you, that loan and debt, you have to get a clear deed. And so you'll be transferred a clear deed, so it doesn't matter, what he owes on it, to that end. It'll be transferred clean and clear.
Bank will get their cut, and then the owner will get.
I
Oh,
know.
I understand how liens work.
And not to interrupt, but that's public information, how much is owed on that building.
I don't know that anybody's personal financial data is public
It's
information.
public information. Richard? If,
There are $7 million unreleased liens against the property right now. I think that's overbroad, I think they didn't do some of the releases, but it's around 3 million or 3.2 million is what should be owed.
Regardless of what that is, and I don't know that anybody's personal banking information is allowed, but regardless of how much is owed on the property or not, it's irrelevant to this project.
it's not
because
irrelevant because you're asking council to pay for that. They're not going to sell it at $1 million if they owe $3 million on it.
I'm not asking, listen, again, we haven't even gotten into the cost of the facility. And so, no, that's absolutely the most drastically inaccurate statement.
It's not.
It is. It very much so is, okay? Because you don't know the finances of the person that owns it. You don't know their other finances. You don't know, and I don't know. And again, I think one time Mr. Wilt addressed that fact, okay? And then again, it's not up for me to discuss someone else's personal finances or anybody else here, okay? Other than to say that whatever price that is came to by this project for council, it would receive a clear deed of the price of what it is. So regardless of what he, again, it's back to buying a house in town.
Mr. Will does not own the property, Village Square does.
Village Square Development Corp.,
Correct.
of which Mark Wilt is the principal.
Right.
So-
Village Square Development Corp.
Village Square Development Corp., correct. The Village Square Development Corp. owns the property, and Mark Wilt is the principal of Village Square Development Corp. So Mr. Wilt, ergo, owns Village Square.
Mr. Howe? I'm good. Mr. Ward?
Yeah, I appreciate you, giving the detail, and I've read through your proposal. I mean, I think, there's things that probably need to be cleaned up in it. I'm a social worker myself, and,
Absolutely.
when it comes to evidence-based practice and everything, but I'm not here to ask those questions because I think that the main ask that you have is the $25,000 for the feasibility study. And it's good that you went over all this to lead up to the feasibility study. But my question, and the city attorney or city manager, or anyone could chime in on this, has to do with the approved uses of Schedule B in the MOU from the Attorney General's office when they settled this lawsuit with the state of West Virginia. So I'm just going to go right to it. In Schedule B, Section G, which is prevent misuse of opioids, subsection number 10, because I went through this with a fine-tooth comb probably the fourth time now. And the closest thing I could see here that would deal with what you're proposing is that it states in number 10 to create or support a community-based education and intervention services for families, youth, and adolescents at risk for opioid use disorder or any other co-occurring substance use disorder, mental health conditions. My question is, since this is not necessarily an organization yet that's running this, or there hasn't been, some sort of a detailed master plan, is that an appropriate use of opioid funds to pay for this feasibility study? That's my
Yes.
question.
And to me, yes, and I'm looking at I have a copy here as well of the West Virginia First Fund Memorandum of Understanding.
Right, I got it right here too.
Okay,
So,
yeah, so I think, and I've got some different stuff highlighted.
Councilmember Worth, did you want me to answer that as well?
you can answer that. Richard can answer
I
that.
think we're at the same place we were when we talked about this 2 years ago, which is not. To get around that issue that there's some of these programs that they discussed could be funded, but not the overarching architectural design plan. Because when you look at the plan, I read the whole plan, this is a recreation facility. at its heart. And that's what they're asking us to do as a recreational facility. Some of these programs they wanted could easily be funded by opioids, but this, in my opinion, and this was the conclusion of the staff member 2 years ago, and nothing's changed, is that this didn't qualify under the memorandum and it didn't qualify under council's own outline for when they were going to distribute funds.
Not only that, Councilmember Worth, what's asked for in the application for the opioid policy wasn't a feasibility study. It was architectural blueprint drawings for a building. When the feasibility study hasn't been done for that building in particular, which isn't in the city, a feasibility study of recreation in general for the city hasn't been completed. It doesn't fall within our opioid policy. Secondly, there's no agreement with the city that we're partnering with Village Square as an entity. So we'd be breaking our own policy for sole sourcing something at $25,000. That is incredibly problematic for this council. I cannot sole source $25,000 if you guys enter into a partnership. It has to go out for a bid process. We're quite far away from being able to, in my opinion, vote on something like this because the due diligence has not been done in regards to what rec facilities does council want to focus on in the city. And if you want to go outside of city boundaries, then include that in the feasibility study. But what I do know is council's voted on the YMCA and is focused on the YMCA, has talked about Highfield, brought that to the school board, and has discussed WI as well. So all three of those things council has discussed because those facilities already exist in the boundaries of the city. And those are my concerns with moving forward so quickly. A feasibility study of this magnitude would cost much more than $25,000, and a feasibility study does not fall under either MOU, our policy or the West Virginia First Foundation MOU.
And Councilman Ward, because at this time there's no government entity or nonprofit asking for the money, the city itself would have to commission that feasibility study. So we do an RFP as we normally would do and go ahead and send that out. And I think if we did that, the appropriate situation would be that feasibility study belongs to the city, not anybody else.
And if I can address backwards, I strongly disagree. And again, the city's application says, how does this address prevention, education, and intervention? Okay, and I've showed data here that other cities and counties are doing the very same thing already with the funding, exactly. Additionally, I've shown all the way from the National Parks and Recreation Association how they recommend this. I also believe that it does fit very squarely into the Memorandum of Understanding and federal opioid money and grants that you have there. Additionally, it does address prevention, education, and intervention, which is exactly what I addressed here for 15 minutes. And I'd kind of like to come back to, one, as far as the other stuff, as I understand it, the YMCA project's pretty much dead. Two, we don't even own WI. We're here talking about it, but we don't even own the building. So I don't know why that's a point of discussion. Three, the Highfield situation needs help. Okay, we've been there and talked to the board and back and forth to the school board, and we basically came to nothing with that. And so, I'm kind of standing here confused, and to the point of all this stuff needing done, yes, the manager is correct. I asked for the blueprints to be done, okay, so that we could see the cost basis. I came here and I asked council, hey, you're doing this feasibility study on the YMCA, you need to be talking about this other stuff that I've been here for 2 years talking about. Why didn't it get included? I mean, so, to that end, it very much does qualify. And the other things here that we're talking about, I'm scratching my head because, we're just, at a place that, I don't even know that they're on the table or what's going on with it. And, certainly the synergy of Highfield when partnered with this, again, back to the big reality of, we have the opportunity here to try to do something very beneficial for our city. Okay, as to it not being in the city limits, it is not. It needs to be annexed in when the project moves to the place where we're going to say we're going to do it. No different than they didn't annex the FBI property into the city of Clarksburg and then say, well, we're going to look at the project. No, you study the project first. We didn't annex the Robert C. Byrd property into the city or the Liberty property into the city before we studied the project. We didn't do that with East Point. Okay, we know that's been well publicized. You study the project, and then when it's decided that it's viable, then that's when the annexation happens. The annexation doesn't happen prophylactically. Okay, and there's a whole list. Again, our own Nutter Fort City Park isn't in the city limits. Okay, this property abuts literally the park. And so, the way that the annexation operates, is the project is evaluated, and then when it's determined that it's going to suit the need, then it gets annexed in. It's not the backwards way around. And so, again, I'm questioning that, in being a counterpoint here, especially given the unique history of annexation that we have in this city.
Yeah, and I think my only question was just about whether it was an appropriate, the architectural design, or $25,000, whether that's for a feasibility study or the architectural
Right.
renderings, whether that's an appropriate use under Schedule B, of the MOU.
Yes.
That was, and I needed a legal opinion on that, because I don't want to vote someday down the road to disperse funds, no matter what it is, that's not an approved use, and maybe.
Community planning is certainly, and again, you can look through all these documents, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to do community planning and economic development and creation of these programs, and under several different places, it certainly calls for that. Okay, and there's even reciprocal grant money. Again, if you turn to all these pages of grants, okay, that I've given you here in your stuff, okay, you can go across here and you can find where there's community planning, the needs. See this right here, what I'm referencing? Okay, this is from the USDA, not Tommy Lopez. Here's the under their, this is their approved opioid fund use chart. Community planning. And it talks about community facilities, technical assistance, and training grants. Assist communities in identifying and planning for community facility needs such as shelters, facilities, and more. Okay, and there's overwhelming data here, that fits that. Lots of sources.
And I understand that, and that's probably a federal opioid guideline.
That's just for them, right?
But with this lawsuit with West Virginia, the parties, are the state of West Virginia and the local governments.
Right.
And so this is West Virginia's settlement guidelines. And I just want to make sure that we're following West Virginia's settlement guidelines. Now, if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, then someone please chime in and tell me.
Councilman Ward,
Yeah.
you're on the right track, and I think that your questions are very pointed, and you've identified the issue. We know that certain communities across the state have played fast and loose with this MOU and how they spent money. This council has previously said it's not going to do that. It's going to stick as close to Kansas and memorandum. And I think, again, it was 2 years ago, the memorandum hasn't changed. It was, our opinion was the request did not fall within the opioid. So that was my opinion, that was also staff's opinion. So, and that hasn't changed.
So, Mr. Worth, since you have the same memorandum of understanding that I have, if I can direct you to Exhibit A, 13, number J.
Okay.
Leadership, planning, and coordination. Support efforts to provide leadership, planning, coordination, facilitations, training, and technical assistance, blah, 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 you see where I'm at?
Okay.
So it does.
I'm gonna have to review that a little bit more. So I don't have any further questions.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you all.
Somebody will call for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion and a second, all in favor? All opposed?